At this stage, I'd like to discuss some of the scientific bases of Bodytalk and the particular techniques we use. It's a very big subject, but I want to cover some of the basic ones to give you a little idea. Essentially, we have to realize that from a quantum point of view, the BodyMind Complex is that. It's a complex. It has physical components and energy components at many different frequencies and many different patterns. But the key factor is that it is primarily an energy system. It's an energy system with either mobile energy or more stationary energy. But even the stationary energy, even the energy of a physical object, is still constantly in motion. People don't realize, but this is in constant motion. Even to the point that it actually moves in the air, that there's actually very small movements, which with laser-type equipment, they can actually detect that the physical things in the room are actually moving on it. And which is quite fascinating, because they're just held together there by consciousness, right? That's all it is. And these are energy fields. And every energy field that is made up of many different matrices, or what we call morphogenic fields. So you're a bundle of different morphogenic fields expressing itself as a physical body. Now, in physics, we talk about the world being made up of probabilities and possibilities. And in any given situation, there are various probabilities that something can be. And the number of probabilities varies from thing to thing and person to person. So we could say that this lectern here has probably limited probabilities of what it can be. Right now it's a lectern. Doesn't have many other choices, but we could change one of the probabilities. I could take to it with an axe, and then its other probability is to be a clump of wood on the floor, broken up. Or I could burn it, and then its probability is that it's going to be ashes. In other words, what we're doing is collapsing its wave function into a different probability, because this is simply a collapsed wave function. You probably heard of this term, that when you have waves, and we're not just talking about a single wave, we can talk about a whole pattern of waves, a whole energy matrix of waves collapsing into a form, into photons and into that become physical form. This business of the collapsing, by the way, they've got the formula. They talk about light being either a wave or a particle, and it can be, they call it a wavicle because it can be either. For some functions, it's better to be a wave, and some it's better to be a particle. The ability to collapse, there is no explanation for the collapse. There's no mathematical or scientific explanation for a collapse other than conscious observation. Hence the Heisenberg principle. Something only collapses because it's observed, and because of intellectual observation. Okay? And it's an important principle, because in Bodytalk we have found the quality of our observation of what we're doing when we're treating somebody really can determine outcome. So we spend a lot of time in emphasizing of the ability to be there at the right space, observing what we're doing. The other factor, of course, is the intellectual aspect of understanding what you're doing. What is intellect? It's understanding. It's understanding the principles behind what you're doing, what you're trying to achieve. That's what we're trying to do in Bodytalk, is we're asking consciousness for an understanding of what we need to do. Now, what we're saying in a human being is you each have different probabilities in the way you can be. There are limitations. You know, I am like I am. I could say I want to be a jockey. That's probably not a good probability for me, probably an impossible one. And if I tried to be a jockey, I'd have to lose probably 150 pounds. And in an attempt to do that, I'd probably die. So I'd say we could rule that out as a probability, unless we can have races with Clydesdales. Now, in the average person, what we're saying is a person's got a stomach ulcer. You know, the person over here's got a stomach ulcer. We're saying that within his sphere of life, the environmental impact, the way his body is functioning, there is other probabilities he could have, and that one of the probabilities could be to be without that stomach ulcer, or to be out it in a different way, maybe only partly without it, or fully without it. And that can vary from person to person because that may be due to his lifestyle. And, you know, if he's a typical Australian very heavy beer drinker or something, well, his probability is that unless we get him out of Australia, he's never going to have a fully repaired stomach lining. So it's not a probability. So what we're looking at is in Bodytalk, when we're looking for what we call our formula, the formula we're looking for is a set of waveforms, a matrix of waveforms or a morphogenic field that represents the alternative probability for that person, for that aspect of that person, not the entire person. That's a huge complex thing, you know. We're looking for that matrix that is controlling his stomach linings, as it were. And we're looking for the waveform that could change that if we collapsed it because of its intricacies and all its connections. And then, once we have understood that and we see it clearly, then by observing it and then introducing a catalyst to cause an interaction, because at this stage you've got one energy field, another energy field, and you need them to interact. And one energy field to interact with the other and cause a superimposition. And the catalyst we use in Bodytalk is a standing wave. They also in physiology call it a soliton, and that is a simple waveform that is not a normal waveform. It's a very, very simple waveform that is high energy, and it acts as a catalyst. Now, we create standing waves very simply because simply tapping on the head creates the standing wave. Now, how that standing wave affects in the body will depend upon our observation. It depends upon how we are seeing it and understanding it. So what we've now got is a morphogenic field that is what we call our formula. We are causing it to interact with the body. We're using a standing wave that we use on the head, affecting the brain, and on the heart, which affects the major electrical fields of the body, because the heart is the biggest electromagnetic field of the body. By utilizing those two principles, we cause a waveform collapse that will bring about a change in the entire energy makeup of the body. Now, once you change the energy makeup of the body, you change the structure of the body. This business of energy goes first and matter follows, it's a principle of acupuncture, but we can see that just simply in the games we play in high school when we get a big magnet, put a piece of paper on it, and we put iron filings on there, and we tap it. And we find that the iron filings all line up to the energy field, the electromagnetic energy field of the magnet. So that's energy, something we can't see, an electromagnetic field, actually moving iron filings. We move the magnet, the iron filings move. Well, your body is a huge electromagnetic field. It's a whole series of electromagnetic fields. And your energy patterns are the same. The iron filings are the molecules, the atoms and molecules of your body. And therefore, if we change the electrical field, then the structure and the positioning of the molecules and the atoms has to change. And one thing we do know from straight anatomy and physiology is the structure governs the function. The actual structure of the cell governs the function of the cell, the physiology of the cell, the biochemical reactions, because they're all interactions between structures. All right? Change the structure, the interaction doesn't occur. So by bringing down, now, what does that mean? It means that from a result point of view, we are limited by the probabilities a person has. So it stands to reason if someone is born with severe cerebral palsy and major genetic disorders and complete distortions of their body, they've probably got very limited probabilities of health, right? And we probably can't change that, especially at this stage. Maybe in the future we can. But what we often can do is there are some probabilities that if we introduce them into the system, it means that their quality of life can be improved. And they could possibly be in less pain or more cognizant or less stressed. And so, as a result, this is why using the Bodytalk approach, we don't write anyone off as being untreatable, because we've usually found there are always going to be probabilities in potential where we can improve quality of life of in any situation, no matter how serious it is. And this is one of the great advantages of when you're using consciousness-based work, because you can assess that and know whether it can be done, because consciousness will tell you the probabilities and what can be done. And that's the exciting part about Bodytalk. We are able to determine our limitations very clearly, and limitations of any other system, because we're consciousness-based.